You have never once experienced the present moment. Not today. Not ever. What you call now already happened, somewhere between a tenth and half a second ago, depending on what kind of now you're talking about. Your brain received the light, processed the light, built a model of what the light probably meant, and only then handed you the finished product and called it the present. By the time you're aware of anything, it's already history. So what exactly are you reacting to when you think you're reacting to the world in real time? Here's the strange part. This isn't a flaw. It's the entire design. Your eyes are not cameras. Your ears are not microphones. If your brain simply recorded the world and played it back to you, you would be too slow to survive in it. A ball thrown at your face would hit you before you finished perceiving it was coming. So evolution did something else. It built a brain that doesn't wait for the world to arrive. It guesses first. This is called predictive coding, and it's one of the most important ideas in modern neuroscience. The theory, developed and popularized by researchers like Karl Friston and explained widely through the work of neuroscientist Anil Seth, says your brain is not a passive receiver of reality. It's a prediction engine. At every instant, your brain is generating a best guess about what's about to happen, based on everything it has learned before. Then, when actual sensory data comes in, it doesn't replace the guess. It corrects it. What you experience as seeing or hearing the world is really just the brain's prediction, lightly edited by incoming signal. Anil Seth puts it almost exactly like this: your perception of reality is a controlled hallucination. Not an uncontrolled one, not a psychotic break, but a hallucination that is constantly being checked and corrected against the world, closely enough that it usually feels accurate. Usually. Think about the last time you misheard a word, or thought you saw someone you knew in a crowd, only to realize it was a stranger. Your brain wasn't broken in that moment. It was doing exactly what it always does. It guessed. It just guessed wrong, and for a half second, you lived inside that wrong guess as if it were simply true. Now stretch that idea further, because it gets stranger. If perception is prediction, then the now you live in isn't actually now. It's a stitched together, smoothed over best guess, built from data that's already slightly old, designed to feel seamless so you can function. Vision researchers have shown that your brain doesn't even process different senses at the same speed. Sound, touch, sight, they all arrive at different rates and get processed on different timelines, and your brain has to quietly synchronize them into one clean, unified experience. That synchronization isn't instant. It's editing. You are watching a slightly delayed broadcast of your own life, and your brain has gone to enormous trouble to hide the delay from you. There's an experiment that makes this almost uncomfortable to think about. Researchers can show a person two events that didn't actually happen in the order their brain insists they did, because the brain reorders incoming information after the fact to make a coherent story. Your sense of, this happened, then that happened, can be rewritten after the events already occurred, and you would never know, because there is no second version of you checking the work. The edited version is the only one you ever get. So if your brain is constantly predicting, constantly editing, constantly running slightly behind and smoothing over the gap, what does that mean for how you live, day to day? It means a huge amount of what you call reacting to reality is actually you reacting to your own expectations, with reality only occasionally allowed to interrupt. This shows up everywhere, not just in lab experiments. Notice how an argument with someone you know well can start before they've even finished their sentence, because your brain already predicted what they were about to say, based on every other time they've said something similar. Sometimes the prediction is right, and it feels like deep understanding. Sometimes it's wrong, and you find yourself angry at a sentence the other person never actually said. You weren't responding to them. You were responding to your model of them, and the real moment barely got a vote. This is also, strangely, where modern artificial intelligence runs into the exact same wall. Large predictive models, the kind behind much of today's AI, work in a similar way to what your brain is doing. They don't store the world. They build a compressed model of patterns from everything they've been trained on, and then they generate a best guess for what comes next, one token, one moment at a time. When an AI system hallucinates, a fact that isn't true, it isn't malfunctioning in some exotic way. It's doing precisely what prediction-based systems do when their model and the actual world quietly diverge, and nothing catches the gap in time. The unsettling part is how familiar that failure mode should feel to you, because your own brain runs on the same basic logic, just with better feedback loops built in over millions of years of evolution. The difference is, your brain usually has a way to check itself against the world fast enough to catch its own mistakes, correcting the guess before it does real damage. Most of the time. Not always. This raises an uncomfortable question. If your perception of right now is a prediction your brain is making and then quietly revising, is there a real, present moment at all, sitting somewhere underneath all this editing, waiting to be perceived correctly? Or is the present moment itself something your brain manufactures, a useful fiction stitched together for the sake of letting you function, rather than a thing that simply exists out there for you to passively receive? Neuroscience doesn't fully resolve this. Philosophers don't either, not cleanly. Some traditions of contemplative practice, long before modern brain science existed, paid extremely close attention to exactly this gap between raw sensation and the mental story layered on top of it. They didn't have prediction error or controlled hallucination as terms, but the underlying observation isn't unfamiliar to anyone who has tried, even briefly, to watch their own mind closely. The world arrives. Then something else, fast and almost invisible, decides what the world meant. Most people never notice the gap, because noticing the gap is exactly what the brain is built to prevent. Here's where it lands, back where it started. The next time you feel completely certain about something happening right in front of you, certain about what someone meant, certain about what you just saw or heard, it might be worth pausing on that certainty for half a second. Not because your senses are useless. They're not. They're remarkably good, tuned by an enormous amount of evolutionary trial and error. But they're not a window. They're a guess, refined so quickly and so well that it stopped feeling like a guess a long time ago. You are not watching the present moment unfold. You are watching your brain's best, fastest, most recent explanation of it, delivered to you just late enough that you'll never catch it in the act.